You are constantly putting out fires at work and at home, and yet your own goals, they never make it off the back burner. The to-do list that never gets done because everything else seems to be more important and more pressing. In this episode, we learn how to come up with goals for your year and quarter so that your daily and monthly schedules and to-do lists help you attain those goals. Let's live with intention. Dr. Sarah Hart-Unger is a practicing physician and podcaster who began learning about planning techniques while she was a medical resident strapped for time. And this interest grew exponentially when she added multiple children to the mix. She spent years creating and refining her own methods of intentional planning, goal setting, and day-to-day life management, ultimately developing the methods she eventually launched on her podcast and popular online courses. Over 100 participants have now gone through her first and flagship course, Best Laid Plans Academy, and she recently published her book, Best Laid Plans, A Simple Planning System for Living a Life That You Love. And check her out on her podcasts, her solo cast Best Laid Plans, and one that she co-hosts with Laura Vanderkam, Best of Both Worlds. But first, a word from our sponsors. You're listening to Succeed in Medicine, the show for practicing physicians who want to master the parts of their career and life that med school never prepared us for. From interpersonal skills to career navigation to the essential information every physician needs. I'm Dr. Bradley Block, and in every episode, we bring you brass tacks advice and immediately applicable insights from world-class experts so you can feel prepared wherever your MD takes you and build a life in medicine that's sustainable, rewarding, and actually worth all those years of sacrifice. You've spent years making careful decisions with lasting impact. When it comes to investing, the same principle applies. Lightstone Direct gives you access to institutional quality real estate investments with decades of proven experience behind them. Invest directly, no middlemen, and a $12 billion plus asset under management real estate firm in your corner. Remember, all investments involve risk. Please visit lightstonedirect.com for a full list of disclosures. Dr. Sarah Hart-Unger, welcome back to the podcast and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be back talking to you.
So I'm excited to hear this too because we needed to reschedule our initial interview date because of my disorganization. Because I got the dates wrong. I couldn't do it. I had stuff going on that I hadn't accounted for because of my lack of organization. So you're going to help me sort that out today, right?
Maybe. I mean, reschedules do happen. I myself have rescheduled things on occasion. And you did a good thing, meaning you didn't reschedule like 5 minutes beforehand. So I would say your organization is not that bad. You had a nice buffer.
I appreciate that. One of the things that physicians are concerned about is work-life balance, right? And so I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that organization plays a significant role in work-life balance, right? Because if you're able to be compartmentalized and organized and not have your mind on other things when you're doing these activities, then you're just more balanced because of that organization. So even with lots of activities, you can have more balance just through organization. What do you think about that?
I do agree with that. And I would say my emphasis, as much as I love organization, is particularly on the planning aspect. I do talk about task management and how to not get run over kind of by your own accumulating tasks. But the planning is the way that hopefully as a physician, you're living a very full and busy life. You can make sure that that life contains some of the elements that are just fun for you or meaningful for you. Because I know as a practicing physician that sort of the default will just be like work all the time until I can't work anymore and be available, 24/7. But if I have made plans that, on this night I'm doing this and I want to get my notes done by here and here's how I can efficiently do that and here's how I'm going to block off this day, then I'm more likely to actually be able to fit in other things that make life meaningful. Not that the clinical stuff isn't meaningful. I love that too, but it's not the only important part of our lives.
Yeah, right. Balance, right? Yes. We should enjoy our jobs. And sometimes we do and sometimes we don't, right? But it can't be everything. And actually, I just want to contrast. I had these two different guests. I had one guest, one of the most popular interviews I did in 2024 was a physician named Megan Mello. She's a physician coach, and she coaches about overwhelm. And she's like, you really have to, you don't need to take every opportunity, right? Not every opportunity. As physicians, we constantly have opportunities. And so don't worry about it. If it's not the right thing at the right time, don't do it. And then a couple of weeks ago on the show, we had Joe Losi, who was the former program director at Pitt of their plastics program and now is vice chair of faculty development, and he said, when those opportunities come, you have to take them because those opportunities lead to more opportunities. And we've got these two, it's like the devil and the angel, and depending on who you are, which one is the devil and which one is the angel, right? And so you know what you're saying is the planning is important to make sure that whichever side we end up choosing, we're able to still find time for ourselves, not by default, but because we've planned for it.
Yes. And I think if I had to put myself along the spectrum of take every opportunity to really be choosy, I would fall somewhere in the middle. And I would say before taking any opportunity, look at what you have on your plate very carefully during the time that the commitment of the opportunity would take, and then thoughtfully make a selection as to whether you see that fitting into your daily life and whether, on the checks and balances of putting that effort in, it's actually worth it. So I'm probably falling a little bit more on the Megan side of things, but I do think there's also phases in your life, maybe in the early parts of your career, or you don't have kids yet and you just don't have as many outside of work responsibilities, when you can look at your landscape and see, you know what, I've got time. I've got nothing but time. I'm energetic. I want to try a ton of different things. And in that scenario, maybe you do take every opportunity. But I actually think the piece that helps you decide like which of those camps to be in is that kind of thoughtful planning about like, what do I want out of this next season or month or whatever time period we're talking about?
Right. So let's talk about that plan, because I think that's one of the things that I'm missing in my life. And if I'm remembering correctly from our previous interview, one of the things that I had said was like, one of my goals in life is to one day surf with my boys. So I have 3 boys. One of whom is actually a competitive swimmer. So that boy is definitely going to end up surfing at some point, but I definitely want the other 2 to be able to do it. And so now when I'm, planning vacations and stuff, I try to have little opportunities to do that. They're not there yet, but that's the overarching goal because, where do I see myself? I would love to see myself in that situation. So that's something that came out of that, like that long-term plan from our conversation. Like,
I love that
hasn't happened
so much. Okay, because that illustrates a couple of things. One is that long-term visioning can bring upon actual happenings. I think people kind of sometimes forget and they think of visioning as an exercise in and of itself and like you put it away, but you're a testament to saying like, oh, I'm making concrete steps toward that. Like I could actually make that happen. Surfing with your kids is quite obviously there's factors beyond your control, but it sounds like there's a really good chance you're going to be able to succeed with that goal or at least partially succeed. Like you've got one kid already who's a strong swimmer. And then the other piece that I think that illustrates is that when people hear planning and goals, they go, ew, like that sounds so unfun. I love serendipity. I just want to like be in the moment. But like, who doesn't love surfing? That's fun. Planning can be about fun and enjoyment and making space to have these adventures in your life. And for me, that's much more of what planning has been about than something sort of stoic and boring. I mean, I have done that style of planning as well, but then I've also done things like start a podcast or write a book or other things that a lot of it was just for fun and adventure.
No, I think that spontaneity, not planning thing is like a lazy person's excuse, right? I hear that from other podcasters. They're like, well, I don't plan my questions in advance because I want the conversation to be more spontaneous, right? I want the conversation to flow. And to me, that's an excuse for not planning ahead. Planning ahead is what allows me to make these conversations appear more spontaneous because I have planned ahead. And then there's plenty of opportunities for spontaneity within the planning. So I think you need a plan. You don't have to stick to the plan, but you need to have a plan. But I think we're talking in like generalities. Let's get granular here about what planning means. And I want to work from the micro to the macro. Or actually, it's up to you. Would you rather go from macro to micro or micro to macro?
I think I prefer macro to micro because that's
right.
why I kind of teach my systems, et cetera.
Surfing plan. And as that example, like now that I have that vision, like if we ever go on vacation to the Caribbean, it's like, well, where do we go? Okay, well, let's narrow it down. Which places have surfing and which ones don't, right? So like it helps you navigate some of these issues. But okay, so macro. So where do we even begin with the macro?
Macro is that I think everyone should spend a really solid chunk of time every year really thinking about those big picture questions like the surfing type stuff. What do I really want? We don't have time to think about that stuff every day, let's face it. But we do have time to spend maybe even a few hours getting really relaxed, maybe with a partner, thinking about those big things on a yearly basis. Let's say we live 80 years, right? And maybe we're already 40. So it's like 40 more chances. That's not that many times. So I just advocate for like, give yourself the gift of doing that. And during that time, you're going to come up with a number of big audacious things and maybe some small things as well. And you're going to keep them somewhere in your mind. But then you're not just going to like file them away forever. Because if you had done that visioning, but then you never thought about it again, then when you were booking that Caribbean vacation, I mean, it might have floated into your mind. Sometimes things that you're excited about do work that way, but you also might have just like not thought about it. But one way to keep these things in mind is to have a ritual where every single season you go ahead and pull out that list of big goals that you made for the year and maybe even beyond. Some people have like 100 dreams list that has things beyond what they want to do in a year, but at least to have your yearly stuff available. And as you're looking a few months ahead, things are getting a little bit more concrete. You might know, oh, I have this big conference coming up, and also it's winter, so it's ski season, or, specifically, it's a little bit less abstract than thinking about a year as a whole. But you're referencing those yearly goals as you're thinking about what you want to do in that season so that you're maybe incorporating elements. And if your family's going on a winter break trip, for example, you might try to choose somewhere that you could do a surfing lesson or something like that. Okay, so then getting narrower.
Wait, hold on.
Yes.
So you're talking about goals for the year. You're not talking about goals for like the decade. Or are you?
It's so interesting. My systems really go to the year, although as I have people do their yearly plan, they do think a decade ahead. Like that's one of our exercises to kind of get started. Where would you want to be in 10 years? Picture yourself in 2035 or whatever it is. And like, where are you? That might help shape some of your yearly ideas. I don't consider myself an expert on super like decades out planning. Okay. I think that's like a really interesting territory. Like maybe that's my next book. But instead, I would say for me, the biggest macro vision is thinking far ahead to inform your kind of annual goals. The hard part about going too far ahead is the uncertainty factor really just can become overwhelming. I'll give you my own life. I don't know if you know this about me, but I this year had a major arrhythmic event after a race and was diagnosed with a form of cardiomyopathy that means I can't run anymore. And I was like a big runner, like marathons, like, in my 10-year goal, I would have had like qualify for Boston and run Big Sur and all these things. And like now I'm not going to be able to do that. And obviously that took some processing, but like if I had spent a ton of time thinking about my 10-year running plan and like how I was going to be really specific about moving forward, that might have been really, really disappointing. Or maybe you had a plan to do something with a friend and then they become ill or aren't your friend anymore or something like that. So I guess planning many, many years out can have a few more downsides than upsides. So I leave the super long-term stuff to just kind of like a soft vision as I do my annual plan. And that's enough for me.
Okay. No, that's excellent because you're setting yourself up for disappointment. I think that's an excellent point because there's so many variables involved with sometimes some of these big.
And even the way the world's evolving these days and technology is just like the uncertainty factor is just so enormous. Why?
Okay. So give examples of the year, like yearly goals that we should be thinking about.
Yeah. So I recommend, again, people spend like a solid half day or more thinking about what events they already have planned in their year. Again, thinking about those long-term visions, getting themselves really comfortable with what's already ahead, and then thinking through the things they'd like to accomplish on a personal level, on a work level, on a fun level, on a family. You can actually decide, like people choose their own domains. There's not one specifically prescriptive way to divide things up. But I usually recommend something like 3 or 4 categories and then 3 or 4 things in each category. So then you're going to end up with anywhere from maybe 9 to 16 things. Yeah. And this is not a life report card, but it is kind of a tentative map, right? It's like, oh, if my year went really, really well, these are these things I'd like to do in each of these domains. And I also tell people, and this kind of applies to goals at many levels, but I think especially the annual, the big levels, try to make at least 2 to 1 of them. Like the ratio of fun or enjoyable or exciting to boring should be at least 2 to 1. So for every estate planning goal you have on there, you have surfing lessons and you have date nights with your husband or whatever.
Yeah. So, okay.
Yeah.
So when you talk about goals, because we had an episode maybe 6 months ago with Jordan Grummett, who had written a book about purpose. And one of the things that he said about purpose was, when you're finding your purpose and you're setting goals around that, it shouldn't be goals that depend on other things to happen. For instance, your goal shouldn't be elected to Senate because that's going to require a lot of an outcome. Exactly.
Yes. So I talk about outcome goals versus process goals. I guess I'll respectfully disagree. I think you need a balance. I don't think you want all of your goals to be outcome goals. Let's face it, like sometimes you just have an outcome goal. I did want to qualify for Boston. I actually did, by the way. I never actually ran it. I did qualify before all that hard stuff happened. Mm-hmm. And you know what? That's an outcome goal. I had to meet a certain timing standard and there had to be decent weather on the day. And I mean, I guess I could have made it a process of like, did I do the training? But that's not really what I wanted. Like I wanted the outcome, right? So sometimes I think you got to set an outcome goal. My personal opinion is the mistake would be making all of your goals outcome goals And another mistake I think people make is, your goals list is not a report card. You don't get an F if you get 5 out of 10 big goals done. I mean, honestly, one could argue that's still awesome. Like you did 5 out of 10 things that you were excited about doing over the course of the year. And, this is a working document. You're going to go back every season and look at this list and see where your progress is. And maybe you decide to change one of these goals. Maybe the outcome doesn't seem realistic anymore and you go ahead and tweak it. Or maybe you just learn from your shortcoming, I guess, is how you could see it, or just that you didn't quite meet that goal, but maybe that goal needs to be reframed, or you need a little bit of assistance and need to figure out how to make it easier for yourself. Yeah. So I guess I advocate more for a mix and a hearty awareness that some of these things are not going to be entirely up to you.
The stuff that's out of your control, like, I guess maybe keep that in mind when you're setting your goals. Like there should be few variables, I guess, or things that are within your control versus not within your control. When you set up a bunch of goals that require too many things that are out of your control to fall in line, you're going to be
I think you get in trouble if you only make 10 goals and they're all like, get my book published by a major publisher and run this at a specific time and have twin boys or something like that. You can't count on all those things. Yeah.
Okay. When you're doing the planning, like as the expert planner, when you're doing the planning, because this to me sounds like something I would do with my wife, like on a date night type of a thing where we're talking.
Love it.
Do you do this by yourself or do you do this with your husband? Like, what does your ritual look like?
Yeah, my ritual's a little weird because I run a planning podcast and also now host a live planning conference where I plan with 30 women and I lead them through planning. So that's not like what I'm going to recommend. Like I'm the host, but I often will do my own planning alongside as I'm teaching it to some extent. But I would say I still sit down on my own and do some thinking. And a key part of my planning is a discussion with my husband about like what are both of our big goals for the year. Because when you have what I call a stakeholder, like someone else in your household who's going to be impacted by the goals that you're setting, it's really nice for them to be on board. First of all, to just make sure that like, okay, that sounds like it will, make sense for everyone. And just to have them as a sounding board. So I usually do some of that planning kind of in the group context, some of it on my own, and then kind of follow it up with some connection with my husband and helping him think through his goals because he may not be as motivated to do that on his own. But if I prompt him and start talking about mine, then often he does come up with some stuff he's excited about. He's a doctor too, by the way. He's a surgeon, but definitely he appreciates my planning a lot. I don't know if he's as much of a natural planner.
Do you get like sighs and eye rolls when you're like, it's time to discuss your plan for the year?
No, not really. He would do it. It's either, oh, I can't now, like absolutely not, or like, yeah, let's do it. Let me get my little notebook. So yes, okay. One of those.
Okay, so as we get more micro, do you go to quarterly or monthly from there?
Yeah, I think that the choice is up to the end user to decide what kind of time horizons they prefer to use. That's a David Allen term from Getting Things Done, and I love it. But I do use the seasonal level as my next level, mostly because for me, I actually divide the year into 5 seasons. I might have talked about that when I went on your podcast last time, but it's kind of a natural fit with my kids' school calendar and all that. But, dividing the year into anywhere from 3 to 5 parts means that you're checking in with those annual goals at least 3 to 5 times a year. It's a date with yourself to go ahead and be like, I'm pulling out that list, but I'm not just pulling out that list. I'm also starting to get a little bit more detailed and a little bit more specific because the season, again, your landscape's a little bit more defined at this point. Like we know what the kids are up to and what their activities are. We know that there's a big party in 2 months or something like that. Like you have more ways to kind of understand what the next 12-week or so block is going to look like. And that's important because if, let's say you're about to have a new baby, that is not the time to, plan a bunch of crazy goals, right? Like that's not going to work. But if you are on sabbatical and you have a lot of wide open time, then that might be a time to put in something that you were really excited about. So the season is when things get a little bit smaller. And then
are you creating steps for your bigger goals? Is it like you take your max
yes and no
the year and then like these are the steps we need to take in order to reach those goals?
I would say it's a separate planning session and you're referencing those annual goals, but you're also thinking about what's coming up. And you, because you're a smart person, are going to integrate those things and you're going to think of things that are just specific to the season that have nothing to do with your annual goals. But you're also going to be browsing those annual goals for like, it does make sense. This is a perfect time to do that book proposal because, I'm going to have more downtime and the residency program's not busy or whatever. The wheels are going to turn that like the time is right to take chunks of these annual things and put them on the list. Sometimes if someone has an annual goal that is so big and it's daunting and it's just festering, season after season, I do recommend that people at least give themselves the challenge to figure out the first step of what that is and even just write it on the annual list. Not to say that you're like scheduling it in, but that way when you're going through on a seasonal level, like it looks less scary. So maybe, it's not write a book, but it's like download sample templates or something. You get what I'm saying. So seasonal is going to be partly inspired by your annual goals and partly inspired by your life and what's coming up. This is what allows the system to be flexible. Because let's face it, like something could have landed in your lap really cool for that season that you didn't know about in January when you set your annual goals. But this allows you the freedom to be like, great, we're going to do it. And maybe we're not going to make progress on some of these bigger goals right now, but that's fine because they'll be there for me next season when I go to look at the list.
And I mean, it sounds like we can kind of use seasons and months, not interchangeably, but do you think we should discuss how months differ from seasons?
I do plan on a monthly basis as well. Some people do prefer to skip that and go straight to the week, but I just find often, again, you want a few chances to look at those seasonal goals and kind of iterate the process as things go in a smaller time frame. And the month is often when things become calendared, in my experience, because you just have a better sense of like what's already happening and already mandatory, I guess, in life. So at the monthly level, I'll look at my seasonal list, but that's when I might actually put date nights on the calendar or invite a friend to do XYZ on a Thursday night or whatever, the activities are going to be for the month. If you leave that to the week, it's kind of too late and it's hard to plan a couple months out on the seasonal level. So I love the month for that. And I also encourage, and this is all in my book, by the way, that often there are certain life operations that just make sense to look at monthly. And you're going to know what those are for yourself. And they're going to differ between individuals. But like maybe every month you want to do some kind of financial reckoning, or you want to make sure you stock your household with various supplies that you need to have on Amazon, auto subscribe and save, but you don't want to always get like all the things because then you're piling up detergent. I mean, that's a funny example, but you know what I'm saying? There are certain logistical things that make sense by the month. And then below that, weekly planning is incredibly important. That's often where a lot of schedule management comes in. It's where you can look ahead and be like, what can I actually fit? Like, what are the tasks that are going to actually go in each day? And what fires do I have to put out? You were really good because you figured out that you double booked with me. Like, I think it was a few weeks prior. But I mean, honestly, a week before can be a great kind of last checkpoint to make sure that there are no kind of planning emergencies that you need to address.
Yeah. Okay, so this is, for someone who doesn't think this way, this is a lot. This is a lot. Necessary, and it, helped me get my life in order. Not that it's out of order, but could be certainly in more order. But it sounds like from the yearly and seasonal goals that you set for yourself, you can then go for your monthly and weekly calendars and integrate the activities necessary to reach the goals into the monthly and weekly calendar. One is planning, and then the other one is
scheduling of tasks.
Yes.
I usually say the goals become tasks somewhere around the weekly level. Like, you're not going to put surf with my kid on your weekly to-do list, but you would put book the online lesson. Like, your goal has now become a task. It's a small piece of the goal. Tasks are what actually move us forward and making progress with these big goals. And the month is kind of an intermediary, and I like it especially for scheduling things, just because if you kind of leave all the scheduling to the weekly level, it can get a little bit messy. So I do think the month can be a useful intermediary there.
So what apps or devices are you using for all of this? Now, if I'm remembering, you're a paper person.
Yes, I am.
And you're very particular about the paper.
I am, but I'm not. So I'm particular about the paper for myself for fun because I think it's enjoyable. I am not particular about the tool for anyone. But I think this all works using Google suite of everything. Like, you could use Google Task and Google Calendar and do exactly what I'm doing. Or you can use paper. I mean, I do use a paper planner for a lot of my goal setting stuff. I have a whole like Apple Notes kind of second brain kind of going on for my more like information repository. But in terms of where my annual goals and my monthly goals and my weekly tasks and pretty much all of my calendaring, it's on paper. And I do challenge anyone, because there are people listening to this. They're like, well, you don't have a busy life then. To be fair, clinically, obviously I don't use paper. So I use Epic at work. And so some of my kind of like clinical day-to-day scheduling is fully electronic, as I'm sure everyone else listening to this is as well. But my kids have a lot going on, and I've just found paper to be weirdly streamlined and easy. I am someone who does bring my planner with me, so I do think it can be hard to be on the go if you don't feel comfortable bringing something or you can't, but it seems to get the job done. I also write really small. I make a little X and I put it somewhere else. I'm not saying it's a work of art, but I do enjoy it.
Us who are like, paper's not going to work for me.
Paper is not going to work for everyone. It's true. For some people, they don't write small enough. They move things around too much. So for somebody like that, it doesn't matter. Whatever you enjoy using. I have lots of people that actually want the aesthetics of paper, but use digital. And then things like Fantastical, which just make your electronic calendars look pretty. Or, GoodNotes has a number of planner templates that all can be used on iPad. That could be a nice intermediary option where it can look like a planner, but you can erase whatever you want.
So what are some examples of some goals? I'm sure there's some privacy with your clients, right? But some of the cooler goals that you've heard people set for themselves.
Interesting. And you said clients. I only do group courses, so I don't do any individual coaching or anything like that. But oh my gosh, so many things. I mean, like home renovations, book proposals, career changes, like big family moves, dealing with their parents' estates, dealing with their own estate planning, learning a totally new skill, going crazy with credit card hacking and taking a trip around the world, like anything.
Very cool stuff. What are some goals that sometimes get neglected? And it sounds like some of those that you gave are some of the ones that get neglected. Some of that stuff is not fun. It's actually one of our former guests and guest hosts, Coben Solberg. He's actually my financial planner. So we get emails from him. He loves nerding out on financial planning. Like he reads these books and he thinks about these things, and you could hear it in his emails, how like excited he gets about this stuff. So if you need a financial planner, he's the guy. There's no affiliate link. He's a friend. But for some of us, it's like estate. That's like, oh, this is no fun.
It's always my example of a not fun goal. When I need to come up with a good example of one, estate planning is always the not fun thing. If that's fun for you, oh my gosh, you're probably an estate planning lawyer or a financial planner. Yeah,
exactly. So what are the things that sometimes do get neglected, aside from estate planning, that we need to put on our lists and make sure that they're there?
One of the things that I commonly find that people bring up at my plannings, I don't know if it's neglected, but it's often like a goal people set because it was neglected before, is time with their partner. That comes up a lot where someone's like, oh my gosh, I have 3 kids and we're taking great care of them, but I just realized that like me and my partner are ships passing in the night and we haven't had a date for 2 years. And how did that happen? Because you weren't planning it in. And I will actually even give you a confession that when my oldest became old enough to babysit, this was recent, she's like about to be 14, but my other kids aren't that young. So we just became comfortable saying, okay, you guys could be at home for a couple hours. When she became able to do this, we stopped going on dates. And the reason we stopped going on dates is because we no longer had the barrier of having to get a babysitter, but I hadn't realized that it was the hiring of the babysitter that was forcing me to think ahead about this. Like, oh, well, if I don't think ahead, I don't get the babysitter. If I don't get the babysitter, I don't have the date night. Now I don't need the babysitter, and I wasn't planning the date night. So I think it can be very easy to just overlook these things and then, look up and be like, oh my gosh, we haven't really connected enough over the last couple of years. So I think that it's those personal relationship types of goals that often can get missed when we just feel like we're so busy with all the urgent things.
Yeah. Scheduling time with people. And, the more we find out about it, right, the strength of your social connections is predictive of so much. And yet we easily neglect them, and we need to make sure that we schedule them, not just with your significant other, right? By the friends that you've lost touch with, these people that you need to call, these people that you did residency with, these people you haven't heard from in a long time, like scheduling time to speak to these people, to connect with these people, to hang out with these people is really important. That's actually something that I am totally deficient on. All of those things. Like my wife and I, we rarely have date night because we scheduled it and then we stop scheduling it. Then we start again, and then we stop again. And so we definitely need to do more of that. And the personal stuff, that's an excellent point.
The friend stuff is beautiful. Yeah. I mean, if you can look back on your last year and think about what were like the most memorable things, I bet most of them have to do with being with friends. Like maybe seeing some nature, doing some cool athletic stuff, but a lot of them are going to be like, oh, I got to see my college friends, or I went to this reunion, or I went to this beautiful wedding and got to see family, or whatever it is. So we can't neglect that stuff, but it is easy to do that.
Yeah, amazing. Well, I love that. And then you can put that on your goals for the year.
100%.
These are the relationships that I've neglected that I need to find time to connect with these people. Bam. Okay. Quarterly, like these people are Q1 people. These are Q2 people. These are Q3 people. These are Q4 people, right?
Oh, I have something funny to share. So one of the women at my I have an annual planning conference that I co-host with Laura Vanderkam, who's my podcasting partner and also a time management wizard. She's amazing. We've done this 3 years. This was the 3rd year. And this woman came. She was awesome. And she told us all about her friend spreadsheet and how she has friends grouped into categories, whether they're like a see them once a week friend, see them once a month friend, see them once a season friend. And then she tracks whether she's actually doing it. And we're just like laughing, but then we're also like, it's brilliant.
That reminds me of like the Seinfeld episode where they were on speed dial, and depending on your relationship with this person, you were higher up or lower down on the speed dial. And that sounds like
that is still happening with 13-year-olds. They have it on their little favorites list on their iPhone. It's a really big deal to get bumped off.
Oh, okay. But, am I a weekly friend or am I an annual friend? Oh, I used to be a weekly friend.
Well, she talked about how sometimes you had to move people, and then we were joking. We're like, well, you don't tell them, dude. She said no.
But if you know that she has the system and then you hear from her less frequently, you've been bumped down.
It's true. But I think it's awesome. It's intentionality. And I think the beauty of it is she doesn't forget to see all these friends that she wants to see. And she's really thoughtful about who she spends her time with. So
yeah, no,
I'm not knocking it. I think it's awesome.
It's methodical, but I love it. I love it. This has been all fantastic advice. Tell us about the book.
Yes. So the book, if anyone likes productivity books, I absolutely love them. I've read like every single one. I mean, maybe not every one. There's one that comes out like every week, but I'm just a junkie for this genre. However, I had noticed that in recent years, there's a book called Getting Things Done by David Allen. I think we already mentioned him in this episode because he is a planning guru. And he wrote a book that really is just like an entire system. Like, this is how you can run your entire life. But since then, I haven't seen many books like that. And I don't find that his current iteration of Getting Things Done is totally relevant to today's world. He did do a revision in 2015, and it's great, and his ideas are amazing. But, like, I have 3 kids. He didn't have any. I have, like, a structured job. He didn't. So I wanted to write a modern systems book for people who have full lives and describe how they might keep their tasks from becoming overwhelming, keep their calendar straight, and set really meaningful goals, as well as addressing a lot of the pitfalls and questions around doing that. And that's what I did in writing my book. So it's called Best Laid Plans, a simple system for planning a life that you love. And it's out mid-December at all the book places. And I don't expect that everyone's going to read it and adopt every single thing that I talk about. But actually, even within the book, I talk about how, like, you pick from a menu what is going to work for you. And I think that many people will find various elements to be inspiring. And I encourage people by the end, hopefully, to have a spirit of play and just thoughtfulness about their planning, because how we do this actually shapes kind of the rest of our lives. An analogy I've been using recently is it's like the art of knife sharpening for your life. Like, meaning, you can have a chef and they are amazing and they're very efficient, and how they sharpen their knife is probably going to be very important because they're using that knife to make all their fancy cuisine, and it's making everything more efficient and they're able to do what they need to do. And so he's got to be really, really good at sharpening his knife, and he's going to learn the right technique. Well, that's how I feel about planning. That if we learn the right techniques about planning that work for us, then everything else in our life is going to run easier, and we can create the delicious meal of life that we would be able to make if we were a gourmet chef with a perfectly sharpened knife.
And it seems like a paradox, but I would think that gives, like, back to what we were saying at the beginning of the episode, was it gives you more room for spontaneity, right? Like, if all you're doing is putting out fires, then there's no room for spontaneity. But if you're organized, you can also and methodical, then it gives you more freedom for that spontaneity. Yeah.
It also allows you to figure out where strategically that spontaneity can work rather than like leaving everything to chance. And I think I talk about in the book, I had like this wonderful time with my husband. We were in Nashville, Tennessee, and with no kids, we were going to see Casey Musgraves. It was a super fun trip. And we like wandered around and found a restaurant for dinner without any reservation. And it was like this great counter. And we have like memories of this. And there was just such a serendipitous air to it. But like the only reason that we had young kids at the time, none of it was happening without the whole plan to go on the trip, to get the childcare, to book the tickets, to get the airfare, to get the hotel, to like, I was saying, like, we built that opportunity for that wonderful spontaneous happening. And it was really, really wonderful. But, if you really dig, how spontaneous is anything really?
Exactly. Well, amazing. So Dr. Sarah Hart-Unger, Best Laid Plans. Check out the book. It'll change your life. And check out the podcast as well. You have 2 podcasts now.
I do. Well, I've had 2 for a long time. So Best of Both Worlds is my podcast I co-host with Laura Vanderkam on everything that makes work and life fit together. It's not specific to medicine, but just careers and motherhood in general. And then Best Laid Plans is about all things planning and planning adjacent. That's been around since 2020. And they both come out every week and are tons of fun.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time. And I look forward to the book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on.
Thanks for listening. I have a favor to ask. You listened to the episode until the end, which means either you fell asleep or you really liked the episode. So please write us a 5-star review, take a screenshot, and email it to me so I can send you a quick guide on how to earn patient trust in 20 seconds or less. Email me at brad@physiciansguidetodoctoring.com and feel free to suggest a topic or guest. I take your requests seriously. The views expressed on this episode are those of the interviewer and the interviewee and do not represent the views of their employer or even their significant other. Even though the magic of podcasting makes it sound like I'm talking directly to you, this is not a doctor-patient relationship, and this is not medical advice, or financial advice, or legal advice, or really any advice. Thanks again for listening to Succeed in Medicine.